The city was awake, buzzing with life as the morning sun painted the skyscrapers in gold. At the very top of one of the tallest buildings, Isabella Kane, the youngest CEO in the country, stood in her office. She looked down at the city with pride and confidence. She had built an empire from scratch, fought through every obstacle, and now everyone knew her name. But even at the peak of her success, Isabella's heart carried a sharp edge of arrogance. Below, on the cracked sidewalks of the busy street, sat a black homeless man. His clothes were torn and dusty, his hair unkempt, and his hands shook slightly in the cold morning air. Yet his eyes were calm, almost peaceful, watching the world pass by as people ignored him. Some stepped over him, some avoided looking, and some tossed a coin without a word. But most, like Isabella, judged him instantly. "Look at him," Isabella whispered to her assistant, a smirk on her face. "Does he even know which way is up? I bet he wouldn't know a helicopter if it landed on his head." Her words were cruel, meant to amuse herself and her small circle of employees. She walked down the street in her expensive heels, her designer bag swinging, ready to make a scene. The homeless man didn't flinch. He didn't beg. He simply looked up as she approached, his face quiet, his body relaxed. "You there," Isabella called out, her voice carrying over the sound of honking cars. "Yes, you. I have a challenge for you. Fly this helicopter for me and I'll marry you." The words were meant as a joke, sharp and cutting, a way to humiliate him in front of the morning crowd. People stopped to stare. Some laughed nervously. Some shook their heads, feeling the tension in the air. The homeless man's lips curved into a faint smile, almost sad, almost knowing. "You think words like that can hurt me?" he said softly, his voice calm but deep. "I've heard jokes like yours before. People like you think you are better than me because you have money, a suit, a name. But skill, courage, and heart, those don't come from money." Isabella blinked. The words surprised her. She hadn't expected a response, and certainly not a voice that carried strength instead of fear. "Excuse me?" she asked, laughing nervously. "I can fly," he said simply. "If you truly want to see, I can show you. But beware. It might change the way you see people." Her laughter faltered. She thought he was bluffing. How could someone like him ever fly a helicopter? Her mind raced with disbelief and mockery. Yet deep inside, a tiny spark of curiosity flickered. She didn't like to admit it, but part of her wanted to see if he could actually do it. The man stayed quiet after that, sitting calmly on the curb. His eyes held a story she couldn't read, a pain she couldn't imagine, and a strength she hadn't yet earned. Isabella turned away, pretending to dismiss him. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something about this man was different. He wasn't broken. He wasn't weak. There was a quiet fire burning inside him, and somehow she had just poked it. That morning, as the city moved on with its usual rush, Isabella walked back to her office, thinking she had humiliated another powerless man. But in truth, she had unknowingly planted a seed, one that would challenge her pride, test her humility, and soon change her life forever. She didn't know it yet, but the homeless man had a past that no money, no status, no empire could hide. And soon she would be forced to confront it, and with it confront herself. A week passed since Isabella had mocked the homeless man, yet she couldn't get him out of her mind. His calm eyes, his quiet strength, and the way he had not flinched at her cruel words haunted her. She tried to focus on work, on meetings, on the endless reports and emails, but every time she looked out of her office window, she remembered him sitting on the curb, almost smiling, as if daring her to see him for what he really was. The opportunity came unexpectedly. Isabella's company was hosting a charity gala on the rooftop helipad of her office building. It was a lavish event, filled with wealthy donors, flashing cameras, and speeches about success and generosity. The main attraction was a helicopter demonstration, a chance for a skilled pilot to show daring maneuvers. Isabella had planned everything meticulously, but she never expected him to appear. That morning, as guests in gowns and tuxedos arrived, whispers filled the air. A man, ragged and unkempt, walked confidently to the helipad. The crowd gasped, unsure if he belonged there. Isabella froze, recognizing him immediately. The homeless man from the street. Who is that? Someone whispered nervously. Did they let a street beggar onto the helipad? Isabella's heart raced. Part of her wanted to turn away, to dismiss him as a coincidence. But another part, a small and stubborn curiosity, wanted to see. She walked forward, her heels clicking on the marble floor, as she tried to hide the mixture of fear, doubt, and something she had never felt before, anticipation. Good morning, she said cautiously, approaching him. What are you doing here? He smiled faintly, his eyes calm. You challenged me, he said. I accepted. If you truly wanted to see, here I am. The pilots looked uneasy, exchanging worried glances. This was not part of the plan. The crowd murmured, some pointing, some whispering in disbelief. Isabella's assistant tried to stop her. Miss Kane, maybe we should— No, she interrupted softly. She could not look away. Something told her that this was bigger than embarrassment or pride. The homeless man approached the helicopter, a machine that seemed too complicated for someone like him in her mind. The pilot hesitated but stepped aside, letting him take the controls. Isabella held her breath as he climbed in. The crowd fell silent. Isabella's eyes widened as the man's hands moved smoothly over the controls. Slowly, carefully, the helicopter lifted into the sky. It rose like a bird, cutting through the morning sunlight, steady and controlled. The man tilted and turned it with precision, performing maneuvers that made even the most experienced pilots nod in respect. Gasps filled the helipad. Cameras captured every second. Isabella's mouth fell open. How could he fly like that? Her mind scrambled. Every assumption she had made about him, every judgment, every laugh, it all vanished in an instant. Minutes passed, yet it felt like hours. Then, with perfect control, the helicopter landed gracefully on the helipad. Not a single scratch, not a hint of imbalance. The crowd erupted in applause, stunned and speechless. Isabella felt her chest tighten. She had mocked a man, thinking he was powerless. And now, she realized that she had been the powerless one, powerless against the truth of his skill, his courage, his dignity. He stepped out of the helicopter calmly, brushing dust from his coat. He looked at Isabella once more, his eyes steady, almost knowing. She could no longer see a homeless man. She saw a story of survival, strength, and hidden greatness. Isabella's lips trembled. I underestimated you, she whispered, more to herself than to him. He smiled faintly. People always do, but sometimes the world gives them a chance to see differently. In that moment, Isabella realized something profound. This man, whom she had mocked, had shown her more bravery and skill in a few minutes than she had seen in her entire life in boardrooms and offices. She didn't know his past, but she knew one thing. Her life and her view of humanity had just changed forever. After the helicopter demonstration, the city seemed different to Isabella. Even her towering office, the glass walls, and the endless city streets felt smaller somehow. She could not stop thinking about him, the man she had mocked. His calm eyes, quiet confidence, and unmatched skill replayed in her mind again and again. She felt a strange pull, a curiosity she had never experienced before. Days passed, and Isabella found herself returning to the street where she had first seen him. But he was not there. Instead, a quiet thought lingered in her mind. She needed to know who he truly was. The man wasn't just a street survivor. He carried something hidden, something powerful. Later that week, fate intervened. Isabella saw him entering a small diner near the helipad. She followed cautiously, hesitating at the door, unsure of how he would react. Yet when he saw her, he didn't run or hide. He merely nodded as if he had expected her curiosity. Hello, Isabella said softly, trying to steady her voice. I need to understand something. Who are you? Where did you learn to fly like that? The man, whose name she would soon learn was Marcus, smiled faintly, almost sadly. You really want to know? He asked. His voice was calm, steady, but there was a weight to it, like he carried years of unspoken pain. "Yes," Isabella said without hesitation. "I mocked you, and I see now how wrong I was. I need to know your story." Marcus took a slow sip of his coffee, his eyes looking far away into memories only he could see. "I used to have a life very different from this," he began. "I was trained to fly, in ways that few people ever will. I served in the military. I had a purpose, a mission, a family I loved deeply. But war and betrayal took everything from me. My family, my home, my world vanished. And I disappeared into the streets where no one could find me, where I could survive without being judged." Isabella listened, her heart tightening with every word. She saw the pain in his eyes, the strength that had carried him through loss, and the calm dignity of someone who had survived horrors most could not imagine. For the first time, she understood that skill and courage were not born from wealth or privilege. They were born from life itself, from struggle, and from survival. You are incredible," Isabella whispered, her voice trembling. "I mocked you, and you are a hero." Marcus shook his head gently. "Hero? No, I'm just someone who lived. I did what I had to do. People call me hero, but I never asked for that. I just survived, and now I can fly because I still have purpose. Even now, even like this." Isabella felt a strange mix of shame and admiration. Shame because she had judged him so easily, and admiration because she had never seen such quiet strength before. She realized that her world, the world of wealth, fame, and power, was fragile in comparison to the resilience of a human heart. For the first time, Isabella saw Marcus not as a homeless man, not as someone to mock, but as a person with a past, a story, and a soul that could not be broken. She felt the walls around her heart begin to crack. I want to help you," she said softly, almost fearfully. "Your story. It shouldn't be hidden. You deserve to be seen, respected, and honored. I want to help you, Marcus." He looked at her quietly, studying her face, her eyes, and her tone. For a long moment he said nothing, as if weighing whether he could trust her sincerity. Then he nodded slowly, a small smile appearing on his lips. "Maybe," he said, "maybe it is time to show the world who I really am." In that small diner, with the morning sun filtering through dusty windows, a connection formed, a connection neither money nor power could buy. Isabella realized that she was no longer the woman who mocked a man on the street. She was someone learning humility, empathy, and the truth that every person carries a story, a secret strength, and a spark that can change lives. For Marcus, it was the first time in years that someone truly saw him, not just his skill, not just his pain, but his soul. And for Isabella, it was the first time she realized that respect and admiration could grow from the most unexpected places. And in that quiet moment, both of them understood something profound. Sometimes, the world teaches you lessons not through your victories, but through the courage and dignity of another human being. The city had not forgotten the day Marcus had flown the helicopter flawlessly. Social media exploded with videos and photos. Headlines called him the mysterious street pilot, the homeless hero, and the man who defied the impossible. People debated his story, shared it widely, and marveled at his skill. Inside her office, Isabella watched the news unfold on multiple screens. At first she felt pride, though not for herself, but for Marcus. Then came guilt, gnawing at her like a storm in her chest. She had mocked him, humiliated him publicly, and now the world celebrated him while she had been blind to his strength. The realization shook her more than any business failure ever could. She couldn't stay in her office any longer. She needed to see him, to apologize, to make amends. She drove to the small diner where they had first spoken. Marcus was there, quietly sipping coffee, reading a newspaper. His calm demeanor was unchanged, though Isabella could see the subtle tension in his shoulders, the weight of the world he carried on his own. "Marcus," she began softly, her voice shaking just enough to betray her nerves. I need to say something. I mocked you. I was cruel, thoughtless, and arrogant. I owe you an apology." He looked at her, his dark eyes calm but wary. "Words are easy," he said slowly. "Actions show truth." Isabella swallowed hard, feeling the sting of his words. She had always believed that her status and power could solve anything, but Marcus reminded her that some things could only be healed by humility and sincerity. "Then let me act," she said, her voice firmer now. "I want to help you. I want the world to see who you really are, not just what they think of you." Marcus studied her, silence stretching between them like a thin wire. Finally he nodded slightly. Maybe it is time, but I won't let anyone use me, Isabella. My story is mine, not for profit or fame." "I understand," she said, her heart racing. "I don't want to exploit you. I want to support you. You've already shown more courage and skill in one day than most people will ever see in a lifetime. You deserve respect." For the first time, Isabella realized that her own life had been hollow in comparison to the strength of Marcus's survival. Boardrooms, contracts, and wealth had never tested her courage or character in the way he had. And she now understood that true power was not in money or position. It was in resilience, heart, and integrity. News of Marcus's skill had also drawn attention from charities, aviation schools, and veterans organizations. Offers came to help him start anew, but he remained cautious, protective of the life he had rebuilt on the streets. Isabella offered her guidance, opening doors and bridging the world he had once lost with the opportunities he deserved. As they walked together across the city streets that evening, Isabella felt a strange mixture of humility, admiration, and awe. Marcus was no longer just the man she had mocked. He was a teacher in a way, teaching her the lessons she had never learned in school or board meetings: courage, patience, and the strength that lies hidden in every human heart. Yet, beneath the admiration, a quiet tension remained. Isabella knew that seeing his skill and courage was only the beginning. Marcus had a past, one full of pain and secrets, and she could feel that the next chapter of their story would demand even more courage. Not from her office walls, but from the heart. And in that tension, between guilt and admiration, fear and curiosity, something remarkable began to grow, a bond. A bond not built on wealth, titles, or status, but on the recognition of humanity, strength, and the quiet power of survival. Isabella looked at Marcus, the city lights reflecting in his eyes, and realized she had been humbled, not by failure, not by a rival, but by a man who had nothing, and yet he had everything that truly mattered. And in that realization a new journey began, one where past mistakes could be repaired, secrets could be shared, and lives could be transformed. Not by power or privilege, but by courage, respect, and the quiet dignity of a human heart. Days turned into weeks, yet Isabella could not forget Marcus. Every moment she spent in her luxurious office now felt hollow without the memory of his calm eyes and quiet strength. She began visiting him more often, not as a CEO, but as someone who wanted to truly see him. Each meeting was simple: a cup of coffee, a walk by the helipad, conversations about life, skill, and survival. But for Isabella, they were transformative. Marcus, too, began to open up. At first, his words were few, cautious, measured, but gradually he shared pieces of his past: the military missions, the loss of his family, the nights he spent wandering the streets with nothing but hope and courage. Every story was a lesson, every memory a testament to survival against unimaginable odds. Isabella listened, sometimes in silence, sometimes asking questions, always amazed by his resilience. One evening, as the sun set over the city skyline, painting the sky in orange and pink, Isabella and Marcus walked along the helipad. The helicopter from that fateful day sat nearby, gleaming in the fading light. Isabella laughed softly, a sound filled with both amusement and wonder. "I can't believe I mocked you," she said, shaking her head. "I thought I was so clever, so sharp. And here you are, proving me wrong in the most spectacular way." Marcus smiled faintly. "You don't have to explain," he said. "Everyone makes mistakes, but not everyone learns from them." She stopped, looking at him fully for the first time, really seeing him. "I have learned," she admitted, her voice quiet but sincere. "I've learned that strength isn't about money, status, or power. It's about courage, resilience, and heart, and you've taught me more than anyone ever has." He looked at her, a hint of surprise in his eyes. "That is kind of you to say." "No," she said firmly. "It's the truth. You've survived more than anyone I know. You've faced life without anything and still stand tall. I admire you, Marcus, not for what you've done, not for what you've survived, but for who you are." A silence followed, filled only by the soft hum of the city below and the gentle flutter of the helicopter's blades in the wind. Marcus's face softened. "And I respect you, Isabella. You saw me. Not the homeless man, not the street survivor. Just me. That means more than you know." That moment marked the beginning of something neither of them could have expected. Isabella, the powerful CEO, began to feel human in a way she never had before. She laughed more freely, she listened more carefully, and she felt her heart open in ways she had thought impossible. Marcus, the man who had lost everything, began to trust, began to hope, and began to imagine a life where he was seen for his strength rather than judged for his past. Together, they began working on a small project, not for fame, not for recognition, but to help others like Marcus. They started mentoring underprivileged youth, teaching them the skills he had mastered and instilling in them courage and confidence. Each session brought laughter, awe, and inspiration, and each day strengthened the bond between Marcus and Isabella. The more they spent time together, the more Isabella realized that admiration had grown into something deeper, something quiet but undeniable. She felt a warmth whenever Marcus was near, a pull she could not ignore, and Marcus, though careful and reserved, found himself drawn to her sincerity, her humility, and the way she truly saw him. It was not love yet, not in the way the world defines it, but it was a bond stronger than wealth, stronger than titles, stronger than pride. It was the bond of two souls recognizing strength in one another, of two people who had learned to rise above judgment and fear, and of two hearts beginning to understand the power of empathy, respect, and human connection. And as the city lights flickered to life below them, Isabella and Marcus walked side by side, not as CEO and homeless man, but as equals, two people bound by understanding, admiration, and the quiet power of shared humanity. Days turned into weeks, and Isabella found herself changing in ways she had never expected. Her office, once filled with the hum of deals and the cold glow of screens, now felt empty without the human connection she had discovered with Marcus. She had learned that success was not measured by wealth or power, but by the courage to recognize and respect the strength of others. And Marcus had shown her that strength was often hidden in the most unlikely people. Marcus, too, was transforming. Though he had spent years surviving on the streets, hardened by loss and betrayal, Isabella's belief in him brought warmth and hope he had not felt in a long time. He began sharing his skills not just with her but with others who needed guidance. Under her encouragement, he started training underprivileged youth in aviation, teaching them how to fly drones and small helicopters. Each lesson was filled with laughter, concentration, and the pride of achievement. Isabella watched Marcus work with the students, and she felt an overwhelming sense of admiration. He moved with patience, explaining every detail carefully, celebrating their small victories as if they were his own. She realized that leadership was not about authority, titles, or recognition. It was about lifting others, guiding them, and helping them see their potential. Marcus had taught her that lesson better than any boardroom or seminar ever could. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Isabella and Marcus stood at the helipad, watching the city light up below them. The helicopter from that day of mockery rested nearby, a quiet reminder of how far they had both come. "You've changed me," Isabella said softly, her eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. I never knew that humility could feel so powerful. I never realized that learning from someone else could be so necessary. Marcus turned to her, a faint smile on his lips. And you've changed me too, he replied. I've spent so long surviving, protecting myself, hiding my past. I forgot what it felt like to trust someone, to hope again. You reminded me that strength is not just about surviving. It's about living even after everything falls apart. Isabella's chest tightened. For the first time, she felt the weight of her own pride and the beauty of letting it go. She realized that love, respect, and humanity were far more important than any empire she could build. And Marcus was living proof that even those who seemed broken could rise higher than anyone expected. They continued their work together, blending their worlds. Isabella used her influence to create opportunities for Marcus and the youth he mentored, while Marcus taught her the value of patience, resilience, and the human spirit. Their partnership became a beacon of hope, inspiring others to look beyond appearances, to see the hidden strength in every person. And yet, beneath the professional collaboration, something deeper was growing. Isabella felt a pull toward Marcus that she could not deny. A quiet, steady emotion that grew stronger with every shared story, every moment of mutual respect, and every act of courage. Marcus, too, felt a connection he had never experienced before. A trust and admiration that went beyond friendship, built on the foundation of shared hardship, resilience, and understanding. One rainy afternoon, as they walked together after a long training session, Isabella looked at Marcus and laughed softly. "Do you remember the first time I mocked you?" she asked. "I thought I was clever, so sharp. And you were just sitting there, calm, confident, unshaken. I didn't understand then. I do now." Marcus smiled, his eyes reflecting both the rain and the memories. "I didn't understand you either," he said. "But I knew there was something in you that could learn. And you did." In that moment, both of them realized how far they had come. They had started as strangers from different worlds, one mocking the other, and now they stood together, transformed, not by wealth, not by fame, but by the quiet power of understanding, empathy, and the human spirit. And as the rain fell softly around them, washing the city clean, Isabella and Marcus knew that the journey was far from over. Their hearts had changed, their lives had changed, and together they would continue to rise, not just for themselves, but for everyone who had ever been overlooked, underestimated, or ignored. The rain had stopped, leaving the city sparkling under the glow of streetlights. Isabella and Marcus stood on the helipad, the air cool and fresh, the helicopter resting quietly nearby. It had been months since that first fateful morning when she mocked him. So much had changed since then. Their lives, their hearts, even their understanding of humanity had transformed in ways neither of them had expected. Isabella took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. "Marcus," she began softly, "I need to be honest. I love you. I never thought I could feel this way. Not for someone I once judged, not for someone I thought was nothing but you. You've shown me what courage, strength, and humanity truly mean, and I want to be with you." Marcus looked at her, his dark eyes reflecting both surprise and something deeper, something warm and tender. He had lived through betrayal, loss, and pain, and yet here he was, seeing someone open their heart without fear. "Isabella," he said slowly, his voice steady, "I never expected to find someone like you. Someone who could see me, not just my past, not just my skill, but me, and I love you too. I always have, even before I realized it." Tears welled in Isabella's eyes, but this time they were tears of joy, of relief, and of recognition. The woman who once mocked a homeless man had now found herself standing beside the man who had survived more than most people could imagine. They were equals, not by wealth or status, but by the courage they carried in their hearts. Marcus stepped closer, his hand brushing hers gently. "We've both changed, Isabella," he said. "We've both learned what it means to rise above fear, judgment, and the world's expectations. And now, we can face the future together." Isabella smiled through her tears. Yes, she whispered. Together. The city stretched out below them, lights twinkling like stars, unaware of the quiet miracle that had unfolded on this small helipad. They didn't need the applause of the world, the recognition of the crowd, or the praise of others. What mattered was the bond they had built, the trust, respect, and love that had grown from humility and courage. Marcus gestured toward the helicopter. Do you remember the first time? He asked softly, a hint of nostalgia in his tone. Isabella laughed gently. I remember, she said. I mocked you, thinking I was clever. I didn't realize I was about to meet someone who would change my life completely. He smiled, taking her hand in his. And now? Now, Isabella said, squeezing his hand. I see the real meaning of humanity. I see the strength in hearts, the courage in struggles, and the beauty in rising above everything. You've taught me that, Marcus, and I will never forget it. For a long moment they stood in silence, watching the city below, the helicopter nearby, and the sky above turning dark and peaceful. Then, with a quiet laugh and a shared glance, they stepped toward the helicopter together. Not because it was a challenge, not because it was a dare, but because they were ready to rise side by side into a future they could face together. The helicopter lifted smoothly into the night sky, carrying them above the city, above judgment, and above the pain of their pasts. In that moment, Isabella and Marcus were free, free from fear, free from the shadows of their past, and free to embrace the full strength of humanity, courage, and love. And as they soared into the clouds, the world below continued unaware of the lesson that had just been taught. That greatness does not come from wealth, power, or status. True greatness comes from the human spirit, the courage to survive, the humility to learn, and the heart to love. High above the city, side by side, Isabella and Marcus finally understood it fully. Two souls from different worlds, once strangers, now united by trust, respect, and love, rising together as proof that humanity, when seen through the heart, can achieve the impossible. And in the quiet hum of the helicopter, above the city lights, their hearts soared even higher, stronger than any challenge, any judgment, or any storm the world could throw their way.